right, welcome to the fourth episode of the PAV, Pole Art Vault Polecast, where we talk about everything and anything pole dancing, pole art, pole sport, pole fitness, pole whatever you want related. So I'm your host, Chloe, as always, and we have a very special guest here today. She is Luna.
Hey.
Luna is a Sydney-based pole dancing instructor and aerial performer who is known for her flexi flows and known for her spins and shapes as well. She's performed all over the world pretty much. Oh wow, like Asia, Europe, Russia, and she's been teaching for 9 years so far. So please welcome Luna. Woo!
Thank you.
Grand.
The super great entrance.
Yeah, literally.
It's good to be here. God, you make me sound so good. It's great.
Well, you are amazing. So thank you so much for coming.
Hey, we had to do the things.
Literally. I've been so excited to do this interview because I feel like I've known you for a while now. And I feel like I haven't really gotten to know you on a personal level per se.
Okay, we're gonna get the dirty questions.
Yeah, literally. So, just to kind of give a quick background, I've known Luna for I think, pretty much since I started pole. So I think
you were baby polar when I started.
Yeah, I was. So I think I was in into two or into three or something. So you were one of my first instructors at Bobby's pole studio on Elizabeth Street.
Yeah.
So I've known you for a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah.
And it's literally been, no, little Chloe didn't do beginners. She jumped all the way through to all of the hard stuff straight away. So it was like picking up an advanced student who just walked through the door, which is pretty amazing.
and then we obviously saw each other again at Sydney Pole. Well, I followed you to Sydney Pole.
Oh, stop it.
I literally did, because I was like, where's Luna? Because I came back from overseas or something.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I need to find Luna. She's gone from Bobby's. I need to go find her. And lo and behold, I found you at Sydney Pole. So, yeah.
And now we're here on your platform, which is so cool.
Yeah, I know. It's just such a long journey. From knowing you from I guess 4 years ago.
Yeah.
When I started, and now being here, it's kind of
it's full
circle. Yeah, totally. So let's kind of just firstly talk about how your upbringing was, and then up till when you started pole.
Yeah, totally cool. So my upbringing is probably very, very boring. So I grew up in central Queensland, so in basically a relatively small country town. I think there was probably about 60,000 people or so there. Its claim to fame was cattle and farming and all of that kind of stuff. So here I am going to school, not particularly into sports, pretty quiet, wasn't super popular, I wasn't really extroverted, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it kind of sat in the background a little bit, and it's just I'll study and I'll do the things and, go to uni and do all that sort of stuff. So wasn't really into dance, sport, exercise, fitness, anything like that whatsoever. And it was kind of always not drilled into me, but kind of the message that came through education and that sort of thing was that you can only be good at one thing. So you can only you're either smart or you're sporty. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly I'm one and I'm not the other, so let's not even try.
Oh, that's interesting. Was that just in the schooling system, or?
Very much so. They kind of wanted to send you down different paths. So either, you were sent down an academic path, so it was all studying, you're going to get into uni and you're going to do all of these different things. And if you did that, then there wasn't a lot of encouragement or focus or emphasis on doing any of the sporting side of it. And it certainly wasn't something that, it's the other side was encouraged to do either. It's if they were good at sports, they were really encouraged to excel at it and represent the school and the state and all of that kind of stuff, but not necessarily encouraged to, study a little bit more, and are you going to go to uni after school or anything like that. I think it was just the way that it was from a country town type of perspective, and that's what their background was, that's what they knew. So that's kind of what I took on board, and I'm like, okay, cool, well, I'll do this. So, study, get the degree, come to Sydney, moved down, got a job, and then you know, as you do, you explore the world and you have a good time and you party and all of that kind of stuff. And then randomly one day there was, ironically, the studio that you mentioned before, Bobby's, they'd started doing pole dance lessons in a strip club at the time. There wasn't any pole studios in existence. And they put up this article, I think it was in, you know, the Sydney Morning Herald or something like that, when you actually had physical newspapers. So I've been around for a while.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I know, back in the day. And Bobby was running with Vanessa, who still owns Bobby's Pole Studio, some classes. I think it was for a handful of people. You'd rock up, there was one pole on a stage type of thing. And here's the kind of story, I inquired and I'm like, yeah, this will be great. And they're like, cool, come along, blah, blah, blah. Here's how much it costs. I'm like, right, cool, book me in. And then it got to the day and I bought admission. I freaked out. I'm like, no, I'm a bit scared. Don't really want to go into a club. All of this is a bit intimidating. And then kind of left it sit for another 6 months, a year, something like that. And then by that time they'd opened a studio. And for whatever reason, the idea came up again. So I did another search online. Okay, cool, there's a studio, let's go along, let's have a little bit of a try of this. And I got in there and the very first class I did was with Candace, I think it was.
Oh.
Yeah, so little tiny redhead pocket rocket. She won MPD one of the early years. Super extroverted, super bubbly, amazing and really, really strong. And I got in there and I'm like, okay, this is so strange. This is such an environment that I've never been in before. And I think the internal monologue in the back of my head was, I'm going to do this once, I'm going to tick it off, and I probably will be really bad at it. I probably won't be able to do stuff, but I can say that I've tried it, and then we'll walk away and we'll wipe the slate clean. And pretty much the first spin, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Oh my God, I love this. This is like flying. It's so good. And it's felt right on my body. I enjoyed it. I'm like, hang on, this is what sport is. This is what dance is. This is what fitness is. You know, you were doing tricks, you were climbing up and down the thing, you were dancing, you were doing choreography. You know, you cracked a lot of sweat and you definitely were sore for days afterwards. You know, it's not just bruises and skin burns and all of that kind of stuff, but, you know, the muscles that you never knew that you had, but you didn't realise because you were having so much fun at the time. And pretty much from there it became a bit of an addiction. So I was that person who started with, you know, one beginner's class a week, and it wasn't very long. I think it was like literally the next term. I'm like, cool, let me book into 3 or 4 of them. And then I think at one stage I was up to probably 9 or 10 classes a week or something like that.
What?
As a student. I'm pretty sure I was doing my day job to pay for my pole dancing classes and addiction.
Oh my God.
But it was something that was so satisfying. It was something that I'd never done before and didn't think I could do. So, you know, having been given that background of, you know, you're the academic, you're the smart book person, you're not the sporty person. So you have that construct there and you're like, yeah, I probably won't be able to do this. And then suddenly the door opens and you realise not only you can, but you enjoy it and you're good at it. And there's a whole world that opens up about what you're capable of. But the funny thing that I found out of that was it opened my mind to a lot of other things as well about what I thought I might not have been able to do or wasn't game to explore. I wasn't confident enough to look into or even try. All of a sudden you're like, well, if I can do that, then maybe I can do that. And so you start exploring other things, and then, you know, some of those things you like and you're good at, and you're like, so maybe it's bigger and bigger and bigger, and each little bit it grows and it adds to your confidence and it adds to your repertoire of everything that you think that you're capable of. And the great irony of that is, if I think back to the person that I was in school and growing up, there's no way that I could sit here talking to you in front of a camera right now. There's no way that I would have been able to stand up in front of a classroom of people and teach normally. There's no way that I could have ever gotten a stage. And yet these things are pretty normal now. I was that person who would literally at school be told, you know, you have to get up and do a presentation. I would shake. I would sweat, I would go red, my mind would go blank. I hated being in front of people because I thought I was being judged and all of that kind of stuff. And all of these things kind of, they strip that away. They take that away, and you realise how much more you're capable of than what you actually think initially.
Wow. I absolutely love that. And I totally resonate to that too, because I was that kid as well, you know, like I hated, you know, presentations and whatnot. So like why do you think like that mind, like where do you think that mind shift kind of changed? And like where do you think it came about, like in your journey?
I think it was pretty early on as well, because simply the fact that I was also like a pretty lean, skinny type of individual, didn't necessarily think that I had strength or anything either to do that. And then suddenly not only are you doing these things that you're kind of perceiving to need strength to do, but you're getting stronger both physically and mentally. You know, you've got to be physically strong to get through, and mentally strong, I should say, to get through some of the bruises and the bashing and the fear barriers of doing some of this. You know, hi, we're hanging upside down by your toes. That's a really not normal thing to do. That's a big barrier for humans to be like, okay, cool. Can I trust myself to do this? Am I capable of doing it? Can I back myself to do this? You know, what's the worst case scenario that's going to happen? Okay, well, I don't get up. What, is that going to change anything? No. And you start then applying that to the rest of your life. So even I was able to translate that back into my day job and my working environment at the time. And all of a sudden that started exploding and going far better because I wasn't afraid to try things. I wasn't afraid to voice my opinion. I wasn't afraid to experiment or talk to, you know, senior managers or CEO or anything and go, well, what about this? Have you thought about this? So you get that extra little boost in capability that just, as much as it seems really small over time, it builds so quickly, and it manifests in so many different parts of your life. Pole has changed my life.
Wow.
And that's not, you know, that's not in any small, tiny way. It's not like, you know, I started pole and therefore I get to wear sparkly costumes type of thing. That's nice, and you do that on stage type of thing and in photo shoots. But the real thing that it's changed is internally my own perception of myself, what I'm capable of doing. And pretty much you realise that if you want to do anything, you can. So it doesn't matter what it is. So it spills over to every single part of your life. When you realise that if you try, you're capable, you can build that confidence, anything you want is actually possible.
Totally. Oh, that's so inspiring, because I feel like a lot of people can definitely resonate to that. Like when they start pole, maybe initially like they don't have that confidence, or they don't, you know who they are, and they're just, you know, at that stage of like exploring themselves. And then once they start and they realize that they're capable of doing these tricks and they achieve something, it's like a confidence boost, you know. It's
a really beautiful thing to see when you're teaching as well. So, you know, especially when you're teaching beginners and people who've never touched a pole or never walked in and been around that environment before. It's, you know, it's sometimes in a studio it's quite intimidating where there's a mirror in front of them and they have to walk in and they're seeing themselves for the first time in this type of environment, and, you know, they don't want to look at themselves in the mirror. They're quite covered up, you know, long shorts, all of this type of thing. And bit by bit, you see week by week, and again, it doesn't take very long, them suddenly start to look up and look at themselves in the mirror. And when they get a trick, you see the little smile come out and you see them stand a little bit taller. And then the next week, they're more willing to have a little bit more of a go. And then they'll hold it for longer, and then they get a little bit more excited. And the shorts will get a little bit shorter, not because they're thinking that they want to show off, but they're so focused on what they can do now and how to do better and to improve the skill. It takes the focus on the physicality of what it looks like, and it's more around, what can I do? What am I capable of? How does that make me feel? And the look and the idea of it starts to disappear and fade away. So you see them just start to glow and burst.
Yeah.
And it's this lovely thing from the first day that they walk into, you know, not even a matter of weeks, a month or two later, it's hi, there's this new person that's suddenly a lot more prouder, a lot happier of themselves and their body, and, they're willing to be more social, all of these nice little extras that you wouldn't necessarily attach to something that is really, it's a metal pole that spins.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you kind of made that decision to, I guess, transition from, being obsessed with dancing to kind of instructing, what was that transition like? And also kind of I also want to know what's your drive to be an instructor?
Okay. So my instructor path is also quite varied in how it works. So when I was obsessed as that student, there was a lot of tricks and things that I loved the visuals of. So I loved all of the bendy moves and the flexible moves. And it's kind of ironic because that's my signature per se these days. But I wasn't a bendy or flexible person to start with. I was, touching my toes. What is that? I remember in my very first class, the instructor had us in the warm-up, fold forward to touch the floor, and I couldn't touch the floor, that kind of thing. But because I liked what they looked like, and I was watching people like Felix at the time doing these beautiful back flexy and splitty moves and all of that kind of stuff, I started trying to get myself more educated in how that worked. So one of the ways of doing that was to actually do my yoga teacher training, and I became a yoga teacher initially. That was actually an unusual path to end up teaching pole, but it gave me a really, really good solid foundation as to what people are trying to feel and how it works in their body. So a really good solid anatomical foundation, structurally how the body works, how you use it safely, how you can actually extend on it but make it safe and make it enjoyable and not make it something that's an injury-causing type of experience.
That's interesting.
I took that on board and was teaching yoga while still being an obsessed pole student. Mm-hmm. And the irony at the time, the person who is still voted the number one pole dancer in Australia, the most influential, Chile, tapped me on the shoulder one day. I think it was at the start of class or something like that. I was doing a class with her. And she's like, so have you ever thought about this? I think you'd be good at this. So it was funny at the time. I was like, let me think about it. I didn't jump at it as an opportunity because there was very much the whole, do I want to combine my love of and my passion of something that I enjoy so much with what I potentially could be seen as work, which work would be teaching.
Yeah.
So I took it home that night. I thought about it. I'm like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? Let me try it. And if I don't like it after, a term or something like that, then I'll just say, look, thanks so much for the opportunity, but I'd really rather just, dance and do it for myself. And so I messaged her back and I'm like, yep, cool. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. And then I started covering classes, I started teaching, bits and pieces along the way. And what I found was that the fact that I had so much passion for it and also really wanted to share, that came across quite genuinely to everybody. And it is very genuine. I'm not that person in the room who needs to be in front and have everybody like, oh my God, you're amazing. That's not what I'm about as a teacher. I'm like, every barrier, difficulty, trick that I had to figure out, every different type of hint and piece behind doing something that is actually quite difficult, every struggle I've had, I want to be able to package up and give you all of the tips and tricks to be able to get that so that you can do that way easier than I had to figure things out along the way, and safer and not get injured and do all of these different things. And to be able to go, you know what, if you can end up doing that better than me, mint, I am totally happy with that. And I'm super proud of you for being able to do that. And I've done my job as an instructor in passing on that knowledge and being able to share that with you and get you to a space where not only does it make sense, but it fits into your body and connects, and you can actually then translate it into something that works for you as well. So yeah, it's a strange little interesting path. I kind of dipped my toe in and went, let's just see how we go. But I found that doing that and sharing it, I had a real love for what that response was, and seeing people go, you know what, I'm conquering this, I'm bossing it now, and being able to be a facilitator of that.
Yeah.
And so then basically it exploded from there. So I ended up teaching way more than I ever expected. Took a
lot.
few years out.
Yep. Well aware.
Just a lot. Quite a lot. It took a few years out of my corporate job actually to do it full time. And that's something that my family basically looked at me like I was crazy. And she's like, you're walking away from a solid, secure job to teach people to spin and hang upside down? Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. And then did that for the best part of about 3 years full time. And then ended up now marrying the two up. So I've still got a corporate career, but have the ability to teach quite a lot of classes. I cross both pole and aerial and dance and contortion and all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
All things that I love, floor work, tricks that I'm passionate about, and such an enriching type of balance for that as well. So it's the mental brain day job and the really creative, nurturing, passionate, information, supportive environment of pole.
Love that. I mean, gosh, you do teach a lot. Like when you said you teach, a fair bit. I'm like, what do you mean a fair bit? Like it's a lot. So how many hours are you teaching now?
Oh goodness me, it'd probably be something like 15 to 20 or something like that.
Plus your day job?
Plus the day job, yeah.
My gosh, and your day job isn't like it's not exactly a 9 to 5, right?
It's a big job. Let's put it that way. So it's a big job in technology and analytics, and you know, I've got a good team of people that I manage and all of that kind of stuff for a pretty big brand, an Australian brand. And it's that kind of, it ticks off a different part of my brain and my personality as to what kind of it provides and why I do it and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, you know, it's you have the stability that is, if you do get injured or something like that along the way, you're still able to have an income. So that's definitely one of the reasons for it, because I'm very aware that, you know, the longer you do this kind of stuff and the more dangerous and tricky we get with it all, particularly in, like, you know, competitions and all of that sort of stuff, there is a risk involved in doing it. And you know, as much as you can train safely, there's always going to be that one time that an accident just happens. You're tired or your hand slips or something like that. That's always the 1% type of thing. So having the ability to have just a stable, secure thing there gives you a sense of peace of mind while you're doing it. But it is, the reason why I teach so much is not only because I love it, but it provides such a contrast, such a balance for me mentally and emotionally as well, because it's such a different group of individuals. It's people go and they come to class because they want to enjoy themselves. You know, they want to be challenged, but it's their fun time. It's their personal time. They're choosing to be there. They're choosing to spend their time in that environment. You know, work you go, it's fulfilling, but you're also going because you're paid to be there. Whereas people are going, they're paying to be at those classes. So the vibe, the reason for being there, the just general sense of energy that's in those spaces is very different. And everybody is creative and upbeat and all of that kind of stuff. And even if people have had bad days, it doesn't take long for them to, you know, spend a couple of little minutes in the time having that transition between whatever happened outside the room. That doesn't matter. For this next hour or so, this is your time. This is your time to enjoy yourself, to just be with you and forget about everything else that's going on, to focus on something that you love, that you're trying to get better at. And, you know, you're with generally in a classroom, a group of like-minded individuals, or even if you're doing it online, there's so much of a community. Like in a room of people, so you can have somebody who's a doctor, who's a student, who's a mum, who's just dropped their kids off with, you know, childcare or a partner. You can have somebody that's just been divorced coming back and they're using this to kind of feel a little bit more of a sense of themselves and find themselves. Men, women, straight, tall, short, big, small, doesn't actually matter. Like, everybody is valid in that room. So everybody's there. They've all rocked up. They've all made the effort to get themselves to that same spot with that intention of going, yeah, this is my hour. I want to learn something here. I want to do something for myself. And every single person is capable of doing that. And it doesn't matter what your background is, whether you've done sporty things before or not. I mean, I'm a walking example of that kind of stuff. Everybody has also got their own objectives and journey and growth that they want to get out of it. So some people, particularly some of the guys that I teach, they just want to do all of the strong stuff, the hectic stuff. They want to flip, they want to fly. Okay, cool. We can teach all of that kind of stuff. Not interested in dancing? Okay, cool. That's what you want. You want to be able to do that and really, really feel super strong and ninja-like. Great. Then there's other people who, they don't actually want to do tricks. They just want to dance. They want to feel that flow. They want to find themselves. They want to be a bit more sensual and expressive. Beautiful. There's also people who they want more of a kind of different, diverse dance style. So this is kind of the nice part, I think, about how polo's evolved in the years since I've been involved. It started as, something that was a relatively narrow type of view of the world, and that's purely from the nature of the people who set up the studios. That was their background at the time. So no disrespect, it's absolutely valid. That's where pole come from, and I really enjoy that style. It's one of my particular favourite styles. But I think what's evolved over the years is that you've got now the spread of people who, some people do it R&B, some people do contemporary, some people do really, really hard gymnastic style of stuff. Some people do exclusively bass work. Others, like, I'm very much into like an alternative rock and a hard exotic type of style. But by the same token, I've also taught lyrical and flowy and contemporary stuff before. So, the different sides of your personality that you're able to kind of pull out and focus on depending on what your mood is at the time. And I think that's actually a really nice part of it. You don't have to sit yourself into a box and say, I am only this person and this is the only thing that I ever feel and the only thing that I ever want to express. Because you're definitely going to have different variations through your life. And, other things you might be like, maybe that's not for me. And then you try it and you're actually like, that is so me. That is actually more authentically me than what I thought it was. But allowing yourself that opportunity to explore is something that's now available, which I think is a really great thing.
Yeah, 100%. So, like, I think when it comes to, like, your style and everything, like, you obviously have, like, your alternative rock and, like, exotic hard style, right? And I absolutely love that. And that's what I, like, totally love about you, because I feel like when you're being, I don't know, like, all your stage performances and, like, all the stuff I see, I feel like you're being genuinely you.
Totally.
You're expressing who you are as a person and, like, pretty much just reflecting it on stage. So, like, how do you think that people can come to their own unique style? Because I think some people do struggle with looking for, like, their own style.
Yeah, definitely. I think also as well, we all start that way. You start with, whether it's pole or any other particular type of physical movement or activity style, and you start to try and almost mimic the instructors that you have, because that's what's presented in front of you, and you're like, okay, well, I need to be like that, and you try and move like them and you try and look like them, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't necessarily work. I think definitely I did that in my early years as well. I'm like, oh geez, I really want to move like that particular person, because they were like somebody that I looked up to quite a lot at the time. But the reality is that's them. You are never going to be as good as they are at that particular movement or style. You've got to find you. You've got to be the best version of you, because nobody else can do that. You are unique. You might do similar steps or similar tricks, but you're always going to have your own little flavour, your own blend, your own nuance to it that makes it exclusively yours. So, there's tricks that both you and I do. We'll technically do the trick the same way, but we will make them look completely different.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's like we will do potentially the same dance steps and same bass work or same floor work trick, but we'll both make them look very different because of our own style and flavour. And that comes with a lot of practice, but practice where you're not having to be focused on what you look like in relation to other people. So a lot of experimentation and a lot of allowing yourself to be free to just move and flow. So there's a bit of a school of thought that goes freestyle. Now, freestyle is a really hard, intimidating thing for a lot of people. So, like, almost controlled freestyle in the sense of, you know what, today I want to play with these 3 tricks and just see what happens. Put on different musical styles, move to different tempos, go in at different speeds, move your hands in different ways, enter and exit them from different ways. So different experiments with kind of a structure around it, I found definitely does help. Or in a dance style going, there's this particular 1 or 2 different type of bass work moves that I want to put in there because I really like the vibe and I feel good doing them. Let me see where they flow, and not being precious about whether I make a mistake or not, because there is no such thing as a mistake in this. You know, even a lot of flips, to be perfectly honest, have come from people falling, and they've turned them into a tumble or a roll or a flip, and with a lot more technique and control, of course, but a lot of these things have happened by accident, because it is a pretty young type of sport and art. Things are still evolving. You know, social media is a very good example of this. You can search, and pretty much every day there will be some random wacky new move that's come out that will then trend, and then there'll be something else tomorrow and something else tomorrow and something else tomorrow. And that's really great because it means that it's evolving so quickly. It's very, very interesting to follow. You don't get bored. But in terms of finding your own style, there's merit in keeping up with the trends, but there's also a lot of merit in just allowing yourself to put on music, to be in a room by yourself, and to do the things that make you feel good, whether that be tricks or dance steps, and be like, let me just see what happens when I piece these together and move as I feel good. And you'll actually come up with your own particular style. And you'll start to feel really, really effortless in those moves. They'll feel comfortable. They'll become muscle memory. But you won't look like anybody else. And that's the best thing ever because nobody will be able to replicate you.
So it's really about, like, being your genuine self and kind of just, like, emanating that through, I guess, like, your performance or, like, dance or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, like, who was, like, your first kind of, like, inspiration when it comes to, like, pole?
Oh, if I'm being absolutely honest, I think we all idolised Bobby back in the day. So she was it. She was a teeny tiny little thing, but looked 10 feet tall, legs for days, whipped the hair around, was the epitome of just grace meets sexiness. And we all wanted to dance and move like her. But the reality was that she was unique. And that's not something that, you know, as much as you tried to copy it, it would always be like a second-class variation of it. So I think, you know, after a few years of trying to copy that, I started, you know, doing lots of workshops everywhere. Like I was that person who, there used to be a lot of touring pole artists and things that would come to Australia. So everyone from Natasha Wang to Anastasia Skoptarova to Tata to literally everybody, Bendy Kate, the lot all came here. I think I spent an absolute fortune going to workshops with all of them.
Gosh, I don't even want to know, like, how much you spent on this.
My mortgage would be a lot better off if I hadn't done it. So I wouldn't change it for the world. But it's that kind of stuff where it starts to open your eyes to different influences and different ways of being and different ways of moving and things that, as I kind of explored with all of them, and different teachers in Australia, different studios as well, picking up little pieces that fit me better. So I think along the way, we all kind of take the best pieces out of every instructor that you come into contact with, and rather than trying to replicate them, you pick the things that resonate with you body-wise, movement-wise, pattern-wise, and you take them on board, and eventually you start to build up this kind of mishmash of things that is actually intrinsically you, but it's not a replication or mimicking somebody else.
Yeah. So, like, when it comes to, like, your exotic, like, hard and, like, alternative rock style, where do you think you got that sort of like initial inspiration from? Is it from like your own kind of like interests? Obviously it is, but...
Well, the music, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's something that I think in the early days of pole, there was definitely a sense of you were allowed to listen to that kind of music. Like it was not necessarily as hardcore as I would go these days, but you know, it was okay to listen to Guns N' Roses and all of that kind of stuff, and it was quite acceptable for that to be blasting into a studio, whereas on the radio, you know, it would be Kylie and Top 40 and all of that, which is actually quite fun to dance to. And, you know, my Spotify is very confused a lot of the time. It's got this and all sorts of other different music on there. But it was accepted to listen to that kind of music. So that was also like part of finding a home within pole. It's because the musical styles that I liked were almost like, well, it's okay to listen to that as a woman. You know, the kind of music that I tend to dance to a lot would have been typically seen as very male-oriented, masculine type of music, very aggressive, very hard. And, you know, it's 10, 15 years ago, that was unusual. Like, women didn't listen to that, let alone dance to that.
Okay, that's interesting. I actually never thought of that before.
Yeah, so, you know, and in a pole environment, not only was it okay, it was actually celebrated. To listen to that and to dance to that, and it was totally cool. And then as things evolved along the way, the more really hard exotic style that I particularly enjoy, so Russian exotic, but Russian hard, exotic hard is kind of my preferred style, that's got a lot of really technical flips and kips and things that you've got to think about in its choreography. The dancers that were coming out at the time were people like Olga Koda and Kaya Bloom, and everyone that kind of sat in that particular style was suddenly getting more and more popular on Insta and exploding. So you looked at that and you're like, oh my God, that is amazing. Like that, I feel that you had that instant urge to go, I need to go into the studio and figure out what is going on in this video. And I remember there was one particular clip of Olga Koda doing, I think it was a handstand flip or something like that at the time, that I was obsessed with getting. And it took me an hour to figure out 10 seconds of what she was doing on video. But I wanted to figure it out because I'm like, this is awesome. Like the beats hit and it's hard and it's aggressive and it feels great and all of this kind of stuff. And it's not necessarily that it's aggressive towards other people. It's just that kind of like powerful type of vibe of aggression. So you're like, yeah, bam, we're here. And you're, you know, it's confident and it's taking up space and it's allowing you to actually be seen and be heard in the world. And I think that kind of fits with where I've come from in the sense of, you know, being quieter when I was younger to being confident enough to be, yeah, you know, it's okay for people to pay attention and I'm okay to take up space and it's cool to be heard and I don't have to be quiet. It's fine for me to listen to loud music and to scream and to bang the floor and smash my heels and clap and all of that kind of stuff. And it's fun and it feels good and that's okay and it's good. And I think that's kind of where it's all come from.
Right. That totally makes sense because I feel like your stage presence and like your kind of like pick like music genre is like so different to like your instructing style. Because I think when it comes to like you as an instructor, because I've obviously had you as an instructor before, like for how many years now? Like 2-3 years. That you're so genuine and you're so caring with all of your students, and I think that's what everyone like loves about you because you just genuinely care about all the students. But I love that you have like such a huge contrast between like your style and like you as a person.
I think it also helps to have the differences as well because when you get up on stage and you're trying to perform, if you're just your normal chilled out self, that doesn't come across very well. Like it's pretty boring for an audience to be, and also you don't have that energy and you don't have that vibe on stage. So allowing yourself to really go to the extremes of something that's kind of like your your ultimate edge of what you want to be, and to be able to put that out there in an environment where, you know, you're on stage, the music is as loud as you want it to be. The lights are blasting as loud as you want it to be. You can bang that floor as much as you like, and that's just going to make everybody feel a little bit more entertained throughout it. They're going to enjoy it more. The more that you get into that vibe, the better off the show's going to be. So I think that's kind of like your extreme opportunity to show it off. And choreography is a bit like that as well. Like it's not necessarily a performance, but you really get to express within dance choreography of that particular style, and you can have a lot of fun with it as well. So it kind of, you know, it's okay to swear, it's okay to bang, it's okay to do these things. And even if you miss steps and it's not perfect, it actually doesn't matter. Like if you actually do stuff with conviction and you just own it, go forth, do it. It's totally fine. Nobody will know what happened or what missed. You're just like, no, I am me, I am doing this, and this is exactly what I was intending to do.
Totally. Yeah. So like when it comes to like instructing your students, like where do you think all that kind of like genuine care and stuff comes from?
I know how hard it was when I was first learning, and it is such a different world today in terms of the range of instructors, different backgrounds, and the technical knowledge and capability to instruct that people have now. Back then, everyone was self-taught, and they were doing a fabulous job of explaining what they had learned themselves or had to figure out themselves. But most of them didn't have a fitness background or didn't have mentors or instructors themselves. They just had to figure things out along the way. And the first generation of pole dancers, obviously, they had different apparatus, different environments, all of that kind of stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
So the ability to kind of give you all of the, I think, probably anatomical breakdown of what's going on. Where am I meant to be engaging? Where am I meant to feel it? If this hurts, is that right? No, chances are probably not, unless it's like skin touching. It's not right if it hurts. You know, all of the things about how do I do this? How do I get myself into this bendy particular move? How do I make it look better? All of these things they didn't have back in the early days, because they were just finding their way themselves, and they were passing on knowledge as quickly as they were gaining it themselves. And definitely along the way, a few of them got injured, all of that kind of thing. And it's just, again, nothing bad about that. They were just learning, and the sport was so new and so much of a little baby sport, a little evolving sport, that the knowledge base was exploding as they were. And I think we're in such a different space now that, having had that and had to figure out a lot of things myself, had to deal with injuries when I was a baby poler. So it's really funny now, we will teach everything on both sides. It is an absolute minimum. It's evening things up, making sure that we're engaging evenly, making sure that you don't hurt yourself, all of that kind of stuff. All of that's very, very solid now. And I'm really quite particular about it, because in my early days, everything was all on one side. So most instructors were right-handed. You would do everything on the right side, never touch the left side. And for the first year or two, I had one after the other of injuries, all on my left side.
Really?
Yep. Everything on my left side. Everything from a lat injury to an elbow injury to all sorts of different bits and pieces, like a whole laundry list, but all on my left, for the one sole reason that we only trained one side. And so those are the things that, you know, and going through all of that and picking up lots and lots of knowledge along the way from different types of teachers with different backgrounds and various different trainings I've done and been certified in, from yoga through to Pilates through to anti-gravity yoga and aerials and all sorts of different things. So there's a whole whack of trainings that I've done mostly for my own knowledge, because I was interested in it, but they've really helped support filling in gaps along the way so that I can then give people who are trying to learn the package of it all, so they can get it quicker, faster, safer than had they not had all of those pieces together. So trying to give them a full picture rather than just like a sketch or a skeleton outline that they then have to go and figure out themselves.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a lot of like training to do though. But like that really like kind of pulls me back to like how I think of you, like just as a general person. Like you're just like so driven. I feel like you're like certified in like literally like everything.
There's a lot.
And like you work like crazy. You work full time, and you obviously work, you know, as a pole instructor as well. So like I'm so curious to know like what your kind of like daily, well, like not daily, but like your weekly schedule is like.
My weekly schedule, we were kind of talking about this before. I literally have to have it on a calendar. It's super organized. I know what's going on each day, not down to the minute or anything, but certainly if I've got appointments or teaching schedules or private lessons or training or whatever, or, you know, even social engagements and blocks, you're just like, I'm blocking out this time so I can visually see it. And if it's there, then I can wrap my head around it, and I can also be like, okay, cool, I'm organized. I know what I'm doing, and I can actually understand where there's free space, and you're like, cool, that's my chill out time. And sometimes you'll be like, yeah, I'm going to keep it that like that. Other times you're like, cool, I'm going to go and learn this new thing or train for myself or whatever. But it's all about being organized for me. I'm not good if, this is probably a reflection in my classes and things like that as well. It's like I'll always have a plan as to what it is. Like I would hate to walk into a room and be like, hey, so what does everybody want to do today? Like I feel like that's not delivering my best to the students, and it's also it's a bit lazy as an approach. And I know some people feel more comfortable free flowing like that, whereas I feel like I wouldn't do as good a job if I didn't have that preparation, and that kind of flows through to the rest of my life.
Oh yeah, totally. I see it. Like I feel like you're always striving for, like, not perfection. Well, I guess you could say perfection. Like I don't really like the word perfection because I feel like perfection doesn't really exist. But you always, I feel like you deliver over and like just like beyond what should be delivered, which that's what I love about you. Like you're just like, you're always like this. Like everything is just so organized, and like your all your classes, I feel like I'm always learning so much, and like you teach so well, and I'm like, how is she so perfect? Like how is Luna like literally perfect. Like I feel like a lot of people really think that way as well. Like in class, you're like that person that just over delivers all the time, and like how do you achieve that like constantly?
I'm definitely not perfect. I'm so far from perfect. I've got lots of flaws. Hopefully we hide them enough. But I think the biggest thing for me is the reason why I do this is because I'm passionate about it. I enjoy it. You know, it's obviously you have a corporate day job. I don't need to teach, but I do it because I want to, and I do a lot of it because I enjoy it. And I want everybody who's in that room to walk out on a high. I want you to all walk out feeling like that you've got something, you've accomplished something. So whether that be that you just felt really good dancing, or whether you got the new bendy thing or the crazy trick that was on Insta, or just the thing that you've been sitting there and that's been your nemesis for ages. And you've been trying and just hitting your head against the wall and frustrated. If we can figure out how to unlock that for you, then you walk out with this whole, oh my God, yes, type of thing. And that's what I want. I get such a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment when I see that happening within the room. That's why I do it. And that's why I will never sit back and be like, oh, well, look, I've been teaching for a while now, so, you know, I'll just rock up type of thing. I want you to keep having that experience, and I want everybody to keep feeling like they're just, you know, this is why they come. Type of thing.
And I feel like that's why you have like such a huge kind of like student base that obviously like constantly go to your classes, which I was one of them. I was totally like such a cult following of Luna because I just think that like you're such a great instructor. You have like such good base knowledge about like everything, as you said, because you've done, you know, all your training and stuff. Which is like never a bad thing. Like you can never have like too much training, you know?
Well, pretty much. And I think that's if anybody is looking to be instructors, and I know there's that kind of vibe that happens as people progress along their journey and they kind of are like, oh, so should I teach type of thing. It's if you want to pass on knowledge, then be a teacher. It's learn as much as you can and never stop learning. There's always something new that's developing. There's different techniques that are floating around from different genres. It's even, fitness, weight training, all sorts of different things that applies to what we're doing in pole. But if you see a teacher who it's very much about being the star, that's not a teacher. That's a performer and that's beautiful, but that's not a teacher.
100%. That's like such a good point. Like I totally agree to that, because at the end of the day, you have all your students that are coming in, they're paying money to learn. So it's kind of like you're supposed to add value to them rather than trying to be kind of like the center of attention, which is a complete different kind of like setting.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, cool. Pay attention to me when I'm passing on some knowledge to you. And like I also should be doing a good enough job that you want to be focusing attention and listening to all the different ways that I'm explaining things. So I'll generally use lots of different learning techniques through it. So I'll use verbal explanations of what's going on. I'll use physical explanations of stepping it through, actual demonstrations, and then depending on what's appropriate at the time, whether it's, obviously in COVID, spotting and all of that kind of stuff is a very different vibe. But I can use physical cues as well if that is appropriate and in a COVID safe environment. So those are all different facets between basically how people learn is different. So I'll try and touch on all of those different types of points so that regardless of who and what they are in the room and how they learn, they're going to be able to pick it up. And some people will be able to pick up multiple of them so that those cues will land so that, cool, now you don't need to pay attention to me anymore. I'm going to support you and help you along the way. But while you're trying it, you've got that information that's embedded within you. And my job is then just to remind you of it and to help fix things along the way. Yeah. As opposed to look at me demo it, look at me demo it, look at me demo it. Can't I do it really prettily? And that's not useful. It's you can watch videos on Insta doing that. You can watch performance videos. Yeah. And that's what their job is for. And they're beautiful and I enjoy doing that as well. But that's in a different environment and for a different purpose. For learning, I want you to get all the tips and information and all of the things that you need so you can do that yourself. And that you don't need to keep looking back at me to do that.
Oh, wow. Did you hear that? Those were like aspiring instructors. That was like such a good tip. Like, I feel like I'm learning so much today too.
Hey, you're the instructors. Yeah.
So if you were to give advice to like our beginner pole dancers, like maybe like a piece of advice that you wish you knew before starting, what would it be?
Don't give up. Literally one piece. This is not a sport that you're going to get everything on the first go. Like that's a myth. This is something that you need to work progressively on. And that's everybody, regardless of their background, their body shape, male, female, whatever. There's going to be so many different factors in this that are going to be different from your body. This is like nothing else that you've probably ever done in your life. It doesn't have parallels. It's not like going to the gym. It's not like doing an aerobics class. It's not like, dancing in the street at the club. It's totally different. So your body's going to need some time. So give your body the time to adapt. Give your body a chance to progress through it. And don't try and push it before it's ready. So this is also going to be building up strength. You're going to be using different muscles that you probably never touched before. And you're definitely going to feel it the next couple of days after, not during the process. You'll be like, this is fun, this is awesome. You'll feel that soreness the day or two after and be like, wow, what's going on here? But you've got to give yourself the chance and the time to do it. So practice is great, but also being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to do it over time and progressively rather than trying to go, okay, well, I'm going to get this trick today and I'm going to force myself to do it today and getting upset when it may or may not happen. You might be having a slippery day. Like I know even now, there's tricks that I've done thousands and thousands of times. And if it's a slippery day, I'll go and put my hand on the pole, straight down. Okay, cool. I'm not doing that trick today. And it's got nothing to do with capability. It's because we're talking about the environment, or, you know, you've had a big day at work and you're tired and, you know, your head's not in the game and all that kind of stuff. Allow yourself to be kind to yourself and to just take it where you're ready at the time, and you will see that progress and you'll feel it within your body and it'll happen. But just allow yourself that space to let it happen.
I love that. Like, that's such good advice, because I think sometimes we can be like a worst critic, right?
Totally.
So be kind to yourself. That's such good advice.
Yeah.
I think we should wrap up our little podcast show now. So thanks for coming.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
for having
I
me.
feel like I learned so much just from this interview, and I feel like I hope that you learned some stuff as well. I mean, that was like so much value. Thanks for
Hopefully.
listening in.
We will see you in some classes soon.
Yes, we shall. And we'll wrap up now.
Bye.
Bye.